It's interesting when we look at the AQTF standards, now the EVR standards, and again at 1.4, there is a big emphasis on professional development. When I audit, I need to see a professional development plan for each trainer of the qualifications that I'm sampling. I need to see that there is a performance appraisal, some sort of activity that works with each trainer to identify where they are, where they're going, what the organisation requires of them, and then developing a professional development plan. So professional development is really important. If almost 40% of world practitioners don't get that professional development, I would like to see where that compliance was with the AQTF, but I'd say there'd probably be a few deficiencies there. As Wing said, there are 2 qualifications now which are starting to be held up as benchmark qualifications. These were decided after quite some work. The TAA actually, when it was first developed, had a whole range of language literacy and numeracy units which were developed, and only one ended up in the package. Wing actually took those units and formulated them into an advanced diploma of, what did you call that, Wing?
Error practicing vet.
So we had that qualification. It was interesting, it was seen as a state accredited qualification, and there was further work around this. And there was also concern about the level, I think. I don't know what the politics behind that was at the time, but then said, okay, we need qualifications at this level. Vocational graduate certificate and vocational diploma, graduate diploma. It was interesting, just prior to this, I was asked to do a mapping of qualification skills of well practitioners. And what we actually recommended through that was we probably need more skill sets rather than specific qualifications. But as a powers that be, within a training system as ours, qualifications are more highly valued than skill sets. But these qualifications are in place and now skill sets are being worked on. So there'll be skill sets for us in place as well. I've just mentioned there the core units. I suppose that provides for us the academic rigour in terms of language literacy and numeracy. Some people are quite concerned about that level being too low. And I've got a range of colleagues who are, they've got very high level qualifications in language literacy and numeracy that we regularly debate. We would dispute that this is adequate, which is interesting. Now I've got a lot of colleagues that are actually in the industry who want to move into language literacy and numeracy, and they're not going to go off and do a higher degree to do that. Maybe this is a better place for them, but as our academics say, is it too low? And this debate will no doubt go on for a little bit longer. When we then look at the vocational grad diploma, you can see the 3 core units there and the type of content that we have in there. Now at the moment, there's resources being developed for those qualifications. There are a few providers who are delivering a qualification. I believe there's one in Queensland who are doing it by online, distance learning, and I think you're required to complete a 500-word essay for each unit. Are you doing it?
No, I was looking at it.
A colleague of mine's doing it, and she's very experienced in this field. And actually, she decided to go through the RPL pathway, and so she's writing a 500-word essay for each unit. And that's to the RPL pathway. My concern with it is I don't know how you can be competent in those qualifications without a practicum. And when we were putting this stuff together for these qualifications, we wanted to build into it a practicum, or to provide evidence that you've got that practical experience. Because of the structure of our qualifications, we couldn't actually write that in. So it's left up to the providers whether they provide the practicum or not. I know some of my academic friends are really concerned about the fact that now they might be required to have this benchmark qualification, which I think is a bit misfounded, because if we got it, we go for RPL, don't we? It shouldn't be such a difficult process. Say something about RPL too. I had my TAA, which I just had upgraded to TAE. And I went to a TAFE and they charged me $90 and they gave me my TAE. I'm really quite concerned about that too.
I think a lot of people are concerned about the volume of training to get a TAE or a TAA. So there's a whole lot of issues around that, isn't there, still?
Yeah, it's interesting. I ordered another TAE, putting it on scope last week, and the TAE nominal hours, whatever that means, about 280 to 300 hours. Here again, I see, what was it, 87 hours to get a TAE. With TAE, we're a lot more thorough than auditing anything else. But is 87 hours enough? oh, but they've got to do homework and projects and things like that. Well, you spell it out. We need to spell it out to equal 280 or whatever. It does require 280 by the time you develop all your learning plans. You do your sample assessments, including your RPL assessment and so forth. So we need to recognise it. But we don't go to an organisation and just end up at 10 days of training and think we've got the TAE. And if you do, and you haven't got TAA, I think that there's something to know. I want to discuss maintaining currencies. The big thing with the AQTF NVR standards as well at 1.4. We can have a qualification, we can be delivering all sorts of things. If we got that qualification, say in the industry area 5 years ago, is it still relevant 5 years down the track? And we need to make an assessment, certainly as an auditor, is this person currently, do they have the current competencies to deliver the units that they're delivering? I think that says a lot about professionalism, but it says a lot about all areas of learning, let alone language literacy and numeracy. And that's where it is more than just qualifications. It is that ongoing development, it's that maintaining of currency. The adult learning area is changing all the time, and we need to keep up with it. And that puts a big emphasis on us in terms of ongoing development. Yet I know colleagues who work in this area who've got their qualification years ago and probably don't know these things. And then many of my colleagues, they absolutely scramble to grab whatever they can in terms of ongoing development. Sometimes that jobs experiences alone, particularly if you're working in a workplace, to try that. And we need to moderate that with our colleagues. I just quickly want to talk about not your usual practice. I've held it up before. It's going to be available. We're just waiting for David to sign off on it and then you can all get a copy. What we're suggesting is there's not much material around to look at that area of reflection in terms of our professional development, to use this as a resource. Listening to our colleagues, listening to what I've got to say about their development and then reflecting on our own practice. Reflection being a really important part of it. And hopefully we can do that in teams. This resource, as I said before, actually came about finding out why people are involved, why they're staying there, and what can we do to renew that workforce. So there's a whole range of induction materials which support this DVD as well. So that we can work with our teams, we can provide adequate induction. Hopefully we can work with our classroom teams and so forth, so we look at diversity. And I think it's a really valuable experience if we're working in the classroom of language literacy and numeracy, to have a go at the workplace and come from the workplace back into the classroom. Wonderful. And I think that's all I wanted to say at this stage. Yeah, it's a blank. Cool, you're relieved.
Where do we get that from?
Sorry. It will be on the AWPN website. If you jot down wildpractitioners.com.au, it's a revamped website. We're going to put it on there. So once it's available, it will be there for you. There's a whole range of other resources there. Well practitioners. WELL practitioners.com.au. Okay, and more of the LLM resources will end up there, largely because of the difficulty of trying to find stuff on LiteracyNet. So that it'll be on LiteracyNet as well. But often it's difficult, but it's easy to go into a site that you don't have to press too many buttons to find stuff.
Will all the LiteracyNet resources be duplicated here, or you get more than what is available in LiteracyNet, or is that?
Virtually everything goes on the Well Practitioner sites on LiteracyNet as well, so it is more like a one-stop shop. One thing, if I could suggest too, who's on LinkedIn, that professional development site. Okay. I was playing around the weekend and I was looking at the groups within LinkedIn, and I never really go in, I'm not really into Facebook, and that you're there, you get these emails saying we've got another message and you go in and you find some other advertisements, but I don't very often. LinkedIn tends to be a little bit like that too, but a number of my colleagues are there. But I was playing around there now, I said, and I thought there's no groups here on language literacy and numeracy. So I set one up, and I was surprised over the weekend the number of people that actually joined that and the people that continue to join that. But what I'm hoping is that will become a really vibrant place where people in our field can have an ongoing dialogue and discussion. At the moment, I think I set it up under my name, Manufacturing Learning Victoria, and I'll change that to the Australian Well Practitioners Network, so that we've got an active site where hopefully we can communicate. please go in and join, because it makes the site look really good with the whole list of people. But comment whatever you like, just to get the discussion going, because we've got a hell of a lot to share. And it'd be good if we can do that. Now, I've only spoken for about 10 minutes, so we're open to the dialogue. Okay, Wing Yin, how did you want to manage this bit of it?
Michelle, do you want to do it?
Yeah. I'm sure people have got a lot of questions for you, which will just create dialogue.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think if, and we're such a small group, if Teresa going to,
Do you want, I think we can open up first and for some comments and then, okay.
Yes. Well, comments and questions, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Or questions.
So,
I was going to say something about the resources available online. One of the issues, I think, is we're developing resources all the time and we're adapting them continually. We don't really have the time to set them up in a way that you can make them publishable. And even if we did, there's intellectual property issues around our employers. So that a lot of that is part of the reason.
I think also our resources are very transitory and immediate. You know, it's today's news that you want to talk about, and therefore you don't create that and then keep it and keep using it for the next 10 years, or you despair when you see that somebody has.
I've seen it around places.
And how many of us always are adapting a resource for every new client? Just tends to happen.
Yeah, we do that.
So they often don't even look like what they started with, because we've adapted them so significantly to meet our client group.
I use a lot of the same kinds of things a lot, but each time I use it, it's more topical. So that's one of the really big issues around resources available.
I'm, as a number of people here would know, currently working with Margaret on a new curriculum, and we're faced with what should the qualification statement in this curriculum be? What is it that people working in language literacy or literacy and numeracy and our new certificate 1 in the NSD, education and skills development, sorry, what should that statement be?
As a qualification title, you mean? Or?
What
Qualified to deliver the new
What are the
curriculum?
qualifications somebody should have to deliver certificate 1, like the CGEA?
You follow your heart, don't you? But then there's always that dichotomy between the academic opinion and also, you know, the grassroots and trying to get people into that qualification. Yeah, trying to find someone to deliver it. Which way do you think it might go?
Well, we've got some statements there that we've got for the education and skills development too, which at the moment will stay consistent, but
But we also have got wording around it is recommended that the following qualifications, unlike the ESL one, where it's actually you must. Yeah. And in fact, the original Cert 2, I benchmarked it on the Victorian one, and then we had our own discussion about it. But you get a bit railroaded by the hierarchy because of HR issues, etc. And also because of the clientele that uses your curriculum nationally. So you've got schools using it, which isn't a problem there. Well, it might be, actually. Yeah, so it's very, very difficult, actually.
And for me, it's not underselling what I think are a very important set of skills. But so often those skills aren't actually reflected in a formal qualification. But I also think that, you know, a university kind of qualification implies at least a range of thinking skills that I think need to underpin the area. Not that makes you necessarily a better teacher, you know, but there's a level of thinking and consideration. You know, you get really worried when you send something out to say that you're basing a reading unit on a particular framework and somebody in the fields writes back and says, I have no idea what you're talking about, what do you mean? And you kind of go, oh gosh, and actually you didn't go like that, but that's one way.
So I think, John, that really come back to the first point that John made, is that in R&M field, that is always like the tension between academic and the trade, the vocational training, because we are R&M practitioners in the vocational education and training field. Is that correct? And I think that it always come back to this tension. Whenever we raise whatever qualification is required, that is often we say academic enough, is it practical enough, is it flexible enough? All these questions come, and then it seems that years and years of debate, we never come across any consensus of what qualification work for us. But I think that what you highlight, John, today is really interesting, is the ongoing development. But I think first of all, we need to define what is professional development. I don't see that if you go to conferences, it's professional development. And I think that in our field, we are very passionate about our own development as professionals. We don't subtly, we don't realize that. My view is that, I don't know how we feel, as long as we challenge our practice, our own practice, reflect our practice, challenge our practice, we learn from our students, we learn from our colleagues, we learn from our reading, we learn from our networking. I think it is professional development. But how can we really document it for AQTF audits, John?
Well, that's the other question that I've got. What is
the best teacher I learned is that how they learn, how they grow, and how they challenge their own practice, listen, and then do something different, a bit innovative. They try the e-learning and range of things. But for, like when I have a ISO 9001 audit next Friday, I'm still struggling on what to prepare for. To prepare for the auditor, I'm really struggling. Okay, but there are things that we do we can't record, and I think that is a sort of my view is the balance between that recording and the personal growth that very often is so personal in our field. As an auditor, what do you feel? And I prefer to talk to the auditor, that sort of work that we do in our team and how we have one another grow, that sort of things. And I don't know whether the message goes through, but just get back to you. How do you see this? These are in more subtle part of professional development, which is not saying you can do a professional development plan, but lots of the things we learn is not really reflected in our plan.
Professional development, of course, can take many forms.
Yeah.
Would you think that this dialogue is professional development?
Definitely.
It is. And you would attend many things. There's an agenda on the table there with regard to the association. What I recommend as an auditor, as well as people that I work with in professional development, you attend that meeting, you've got an agenda, ask the chair to facilitate it, to sign it and date it. The dialogue description of today, ask me to sign it and date it. Make sure it goes through organisation and on your file, in your personnel file. It is all extremely valid for the professional development. And if you look at the diversity of opportunities that you have, the formalised one, the conference can and can't be, depends on how well you participate in that. But I would certainly take a conference program, I would circle the bits that you attend, get a signature and date on it and get it on your file. And I think at the end of the day, not just the quantity of, it is the quality of, but the quantity of has some reflection with regard to how connected you are. And for me, as an auditor, when I see professional development that involves professional dialogues, rather than just attending a session and listening, it's probably a lot more valuable. With regard to the qualification issue, it's sort of wonderful now we use this terminology. It is preferred that, and I work with a lot of organisations that market their programs, whether certificate 3 in retail or in hospitality or the advanced diploma in management, that try and look at what do people need to get in their qualification, and sometimes I find that they put on it very high bars, and I think, oh, okay. Sometimes extremely low bars and no bars at all. If you're looking at advanced diploma in management, you would expect people to have certain skills to be able to use the knowledge and skills that relate to that qualification and put it into practice so that they're competent. If we've got a deficit, a limitation in language literacy and numeracy, for an organisation it can be very costly to bring a learner to that level where they could be competent in advanced diploma in management. So wouldn't you then put some entry requirements on it? there I say to put the preferred. It is preferred that you have. Now, with regard to curriculum development, our bureaucracies don't like that. They want it specific. But what they can do with is, at least if you draw a line somewhere, and then you put it is preferred that, you can put a whole range of other things in there which sort of describes the type of person that this is suitable for. And that often can help you to build in the rigour. But also, when people apply for that particular course, you've also got a bit of an out. If you identify the diversity of things that they have, they're going to really be struggling to complete the qualification. So, if you look at play with, bearing in mind our state authorities don't like that when you have a curriculum accredited.
We know.
So you can put in a baseline and you can add that to it. But I think all of us as educators, we don't want to set anybody up for failure. We want them to be able to succeed. So it's reasonable to identify what a person needs to succeed and to be able to document that as, okay, it is preferred that or whatever. So if you really find that if you enrol someone and you're setting them up for failure, you don't need to do it. If you're very specific about stuff and they've got it, you don't really have a right to say, sorry, we're not enrolling you, and they can actually appeal your decision. The preferred that you have gives you an out and gives you the opportunity for the dialogue as well. Yes, but professional development comes in many shapes and sizes. I would just recommend that to support your organisation, let alone your own professionalism, keep it.
John, can I just roll it back a little bit further, pre all of this? There was I come from TAFE, and there was, with the other VET programs years ago, it was deemed that really anybody could teach it, and really it was very easy, and you know, you didn't need
Very soft.
There are all these qualifications, and really, you know, what's all the fuss about? To now where it's become actually an HR issue with our organisation, where they're trying to put redeployees into delivering LLM, and there lies the problem, because I think the type of person that is drawn to this type of teaching has naturally inherent skills to be able to pass on, because they wouldn't be there otherwise. And I think that you are then getting to, now with these qualifications, we'll get a recognition with the grad cert and the grad give. The ability for these people that are coming in later in life to actually get the recognition that they deserve for the work that they're actually doing naturally, and then going off and doing exactly what you're saying, getting the professional development around that as well, and then developing within the course. And I say that because of where I've come from, accidentally come into this field, because I didn't realise that I had those skills, but it was just recognised by another lecturer at the time. And I guess it's a case of trying to encourage the right people into this field, and nurturing them and allowing them to have the qualifications that they need to become good practitioners, and pass it on to the younger ones as they're coming up. We had, and I'll take it back to Wes, we had a very good practitioner in there, and those of Wes will know who I'm talking about, who struggled because she was under 30 to actually get recognition as a practitioner or anybody in the field to actually listen to what she was saying. And as a result, lost her in the field, and we lost a really valuable person. I think you know who I'm talking about. And that for her was a bad experience, but she was probably going to be a really good practitioner in the field, but you know, gone now. And I think that's unfortunate that's another, I guess, dichotomy that we struggle with is the younger ones have trouble actually getting a footing in this until they've had the life experience to be able to get the credibility. I know that's very long-winded, but it just sort of puts us in a quite a unique place, and I think those we practitioners that are in this field are very good at self-reflection as well, and that's what makes us, I guess, still here when we're well into our 60s, I guess, because we do a lot of that and try and keep ourselves going, try and keep it diverse, try and keep it relevant, contextualise it as much as we can. On the other hand, when you try and teach vet practitioners LLM, they really struggle. They really do struggle with it. So that's my sixpence worth, just for you all. Did I have a bit of a chew on?
Yeah, I think one thing you're identifying there is the parochial nature of our industry, if you like. And I've got colleagues who are highly academically qualified in this area, and they're dynamic because we bounce all the time. And I've got others, and it's sort of like 20 years of 1 year experience. They're extremely highly qualified in the area, and they look down on someone that doesn't have those qualifications. And I think the 30-year-old is probably a bit of a reflection on that. We've got this whole diversity of people working in the industry, and there are those who've got a very strong belief around that rigour, and anybody who doesn't have it. And that sort of precludes young people who can be extremely skilled with the opportunity for qualifications entering the field because of this parochial nature. So it's something we need to do. I think it comes with probably a teaching background, rationalisation, and probably the maturity of people that work in this area. Sort of things come together. There's the dynamos, and then there's those who are very parochial. And I think we need to work with all of them, and hopefully with the parochial ones, so that they become encouraging rather than resistant.
I think more and more the adult literacy field is becoming more obvious out there in the real world. I mean, I've only been in adult literacy for 6 years. I've just taught for the education department for the rest of my life. I really didn't even take any notice, didn't really appreciate the existence of adult literacy in various areas. There was nothing, I think probably my focus was on, junior primary teaching, and fell into this job and wished I'd known about it a long time, because, as much as my experience in the education department was fantastic, and when it was time to move on, this is just the rewards that I get out of what I teach and what I do is fantastic. And also the networking, is different. So when you go to education department, professional development, it's much, there's a lot more bitching and carrying on, I think. I just think, I don't know, maybe I haven't been in this field for enough, but there is, but I just think we're a much varied field, people coming from many areas, but still sharing in what they value and how they want to see adult literacy developing even more. So it's great.
Do you think that the two qualifications which are starting to be called benchmark, and indeed I would never say that they will be the requirement, but they are starting to talk about the benchmark, do you think they're appropriate and sufficient for an LLM practitioner?
They're designed for people who have already been in the workplace, so from that perspective, there's value in them. But what about the people who have come through an academic pathway, who potentially have wonderful skills and wonderful potentially have potential, and maybe wonderful in their job. But if they're the only options, then that group of people misses out.
So the year 12 that decides whether to enrol at TAFE South Australia in the grad cert, grad diploma.
What does grad mean?
Can they complete this qualification?
Yeah, but you can't be year 12 and be enrolled in a grad.
There is really no entry requirement, or they talk about some years of experience. Yeah, I don't think that like a year 12 graduate can.
But would you say no when you never year 12 graduate applied? What would you do? Have you got an interview?
There really is nothing in the qualification that says
Exactly.
that enroll.
In that case, I object even more, which I did at the time, for the word graduate to be part of the title.
you objected.
Well, it didn't make
Oh,
any
you
difference. Didn't make any difference.
Well,
Yeah,
because I don't think it is a graduate qualification. Or
No, because it's not. I mean,
A
a
graduate
qualification means you have.
Traditionally means a university
Yeah,
graduate.
it doesn't mean you finished high school.
So I suppose we need to go back to the new AQF with its 12 levels, which
Yeah.
sort of place these things in a more logical order than what the A levels did, I suppose. Because it is really a matter of terminology and it's our conception of graduate, and yet the grad cert and grad diploma are usually seen as a chunks that build on something you've already got. And we use it a lot in industry, manufacturing industry. We've got a diploma in plastics manufacturing. We might add a law component to it, which would be a grad cert component, but we don't go off and do a law degree. Or someone that's working in law that wants to work in this plastics area, that would then do the grad cert, which is a bite-sized chunk, rather than having to do a whole diploma of plastics, for example.
In fact, the university can deliver that qualification, so you could say, I got it from the university. Because they can deliver it. Can I ask, leading on from what Peter mentioned, the real push, as you would know, is certainly to embed a lot of the vocational training packages. And so, what's your thoughts? I mean, around the tracks that you've been, what's the discussion on that? Because, I mean, you know, where I sit in the curriculum area, the pre-voc, the pre-vocational classes that they sort of put together, or programs that they put together, they are grabbing from the LLM programs. And in my understanding, well, I'm not 100% sure that they actually do use the lecturers from.
Some do, some don't.
Some do, some don't. Yeah, because they're not issuing a qualification in literacy, so they're mixing it around. So, what are people's thoughts about it getting embedded into vocation, and can they have the qualifications to teach?
This will become.
I think it's a very good question as far as skills for all is concerned.
Exactly, and then this will become a bigger.
Open the floodgates.
And I've just seen today from that is a funding program, something called Australian Apprenticeship Access Program. Okay, and I had the chance to look at the criteria, and then this apprenticeship program must integrate R&N components. Okay, and I got the laundry manager talking to me and said, who can do the R&N component, right? Can we do it, or can you do it, or who can do it? Okay, something around that conversation. So, because it is a funding, is one of the criteria. So it means foundation skill, language, and literacy become more and more important in a range of other federal or state government-funded programs. But they didn't specify who is doing what, okay? Or that is probably something like a question that will become.
But it's here with us now because the training packages, the new ones, the revised ones, have actually got the wording in it saying you may select from an accredited course.
Yeah.
So it's already here with us.
Can select so to ESD,
Yeah.
And diversity is great and it's fantastic if it's realistic.
Yeah.
And I've got to think, I suppose as a professional I've always had to keep in mind there's the politics of things. And often there's not much you can do about it. And I've worked in the area that managing the institute training board to get the opportunity for that input. But there is a politics thing. It's like employability skills. When we developed training packages back in the early 90s, when we started that stuff, we built in employability skills. It was a key focus as we developed the qualifications. It's the politics now, and it's the employer groups that are interacting with government that want these pulled out as separate. It's like language literacy and numeracy, built in, not bolted on. And now there's this movement about the let's bolt it on again. And I mean, there is some rationale in it because I think when you build everything in, you can lose it. You don't know what it is. And then you can't do the Pacific. So there is a place for the bolted on as well. But to do it just for a political thing, because employers are now saying we'd like it spelled out in training packages, and auditing, very few organisations that I see effectively address those employability skills as they are now in training packages. It's another table with ticks, and there's no evidence of any further implementation. So horses for courses, politically we know it needs to be there. As a sensitive practitioner, we identify ways around that to make it effective, don't we? in, although it can be frustrating because we see colleagues that just just listen to it, they deliver qualifications or with other units built in, and they don't really have the currency of cognitive to do it. But that's where we work legally, isn't it? And we support each other.
Okay.
Well, you don't. It's too much like hard work. No, I think in the language literacy and numeracy area, we're really good at it. If we just aware the program, managing an institute training board for 15 years, many forums, and I had an interest in this language literacy and numeracy. And I would go to forums that would involve language literacy and numeracy, and I'd be told by academics, John, what do you know about? You come from industry. Till I start unravelling, look, I've done this stuff at university, I've done this stuff in terms of data. I've done primary and secondary teaching, I've been involved in this development, and I've remained currently competent. And I was thinking, why should I have to justify that?
Exactly.
But there is that parochialism. And I think we need to understand each other, we need to respect each other and support each other. And for me, visiting many workplaces where there are fantastic workplace trainers, they may not be associated with the TAFE, they may be an enterprise-based teacher doing a fantastic job, who would do a really fantastic job in LLM. And probably the most appropriate in the workplace rather than bringing someone in. And what opportunities is there for that person? They're not going to do a higher degree in LLM, not appropriate. Yet, a number of my colleagues would say, well, that's what they should do. And I sort of think maybe these benchmark qualifications provide that opportunity.
Perhaps getting back to skill sets.
Yeah.
So is it the conclusion is still that the qualifications are still, I think, still very worthwhile? That is that how you draw the conclusion? Like, probably no conclusion, but that again, maintaining currency, continuous development, I think this is the strength of our field. But how do we articulate it better is, I think, it's a big challenge. Yeah.
I think those benchmark qualifications are probably extremely suitable with a practicum component, an experiential component, and that component that says ongoing development. So we're not picking up a qualification and running with it.
Exactly.
We're working with people, we have the mentoring support, etc. That, I think, is extremely effective. And I don't think we need a higher degree to deliver language literacy and numeracy in the workplace, for example. If we've got this with the practicum and with all the support that's built in, I think that's adequate. I think for our people in the workplace who understand the workplace extremely well, are fantastic educators, also most appropriate.
John, thank you. I might wind it up.
Sure, you've got to get on with the meeting.
Very good. Meeting. I thank you very much. I think we're very privileged to have you here today. It's the SACAL's work. We're working really, really hard at spreading our wings and but gathering the wealth of experience and knowledge around Australia. So it's great for our members, it's great for our own professional development, and it helps us have more conversations and to be more empowered about helping each other and making this area of education a really, really positive one and making a difference to all the people that we come across. And that's why we're all here, making a difference. It challenges us all the time. You're never going to let anybody out of your classroom unless you've figured out a way to help them learn and improve their skills and improve their self-confidence. And that's the big challenge, and that's what keeps us all going there. So thank you, John.